Hey, everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. It's a big day. Both good and bad has gone down today. Please take a second, by the way, to click thumbs up, share this, let people know, click subscribe if you haven't, and all the donation will go to people who are struggling, who need a little help with our little solidarity fund. So all the super chat donations, all the donations on Venmo at Lee Camp, they all go to people who need a leg up, need a little help. But let's get into it. So, earlier today, I find out that Bill Cosby has been released. What in the flying fuck? They've overturned his conviction, and he has walked free to rape again. But besides, and they let him free on some ridiculous, like someone had made a promise that he wouldn't be prosecuted. It doesn't really matter. It's all fucking bullshit, glad handing and not just like male favoritism, but like celebrity favoritism is all that's going down. But on top of that, he actually had a parole hearing recently, and he failed to get paroled because they said he hadn't put forward a parole plan or something. But that means that his first chance at parole had already come up. I think he served like 2 years. So apparently that was his first shot at parole. He could have been paroled then, even without this latest overturning of the judgment, which goes to show how little time he would have served, because he was prosecuted for only one of the rapes, but we know that numerous, if not dozens of women have come forward. But this is one that they actually prosecuted him on. And so he's already had his first parole. He could have been paroled earlier. And anyway, he's walking free today. Meanwhile, Julian Assange sits in prison. Think about that for a while. Just let that sink in. Just take that and just sit with it. A man who raped numerous women's, nailing it today. A man who raped numerous women spends 2 years in prison for it. And a guy who never did anything but reveal the truth to all of us about the crimes of our government and governments around the world, been in prison for essentially over 9 years, but over 2 years in Belmarsh prison, 7 in the Ecuadorian embassy. And but Bill Cosby's free to go about his way. Go back there, having a good old time, eating Jell-O pudding, doing sit-down comedy. And it's just fucking insane. But the day got better. The day got better as it went along because Donald Rumsfeld kicked the fucking bucket. So I'd like to take a moment to say, fuck that guy. Huh? We got rid of Donald Rumsfeld. And I don't know. I don't necessarily tell this story very often, but so I used to write comedy for Huffington Post. They had this is years ago. Probably over 10 years ago. They had a comedy staff and actual comedy page of people they paid. And so I would write political comedy pieces back then. But then they stopped paying people because they realized they could get as many clicks by just grabbing content around the web and not paying anybody. So they stopped paying everybody. But occasionally I would still post articles for them. So basically I was an unpaid. I didn't do it very often because I was like, kind of, fuck you guys for not paying anybody. But occasionally, I wanted a column to get some views or whatever. So I'd still write for them occasionally. And that went on for a few months. And then within weeks of having been sold to AOL, Huffington Post was sold to AOL, I send in my article, my column, and they say, we're not going to publish this one. It was the first time they'd ever told me that. And I said, is it because I called Donald Rumsfeld a war criminal within the article, within the column? Is that the problem? Keep in mind, Huffington Post it was an ostensibly, and I suppose maybe still ostensibly, left-wing place. It's all just pro-Democrat. It's really nowadays it's just what right-wing garbage, but right-wing for the Democrats. And anyway, so this is the first time they've ever told me I couldn't publish anything. I said, is it because I called Donald Rumsfeld a war criminal? And they go, yeah, it's not really our tone. And that was the last day I ever wrote for Huffington Post. Never sent them anything again because fuck those guys and fuck Donald Rumsfeld. He was a war criminal and now he's a dead war criminal. But I thought I would read you some of New York Times article on Donald Rumsfeld. Hold on one second. I thought I'd read you some of the New York Times article on Donald Rumsfeld. And I would imagine that the New York Times views this as a nuanced article. They probably view this as we didn't just fawn over him or nothing. But in fact, if you actually look at the language, it's an incredibly loving, friendly, positive article about one of the largest war criminals this country's ever seen. To give you a little bit of background about Donald Rumsfeld, he first served as Secretary of Defense in 1975 to 1977 under Gerald Ford. He then came back in 2001. So between those years, he was back in private business. Where's the name of it? He was the CEO of multiple companies, but the CEO of General Instruments and also the CEO of the pharmaceutical corporation, G.D. Searle and Company. So as a CEO of Big Pharma, he probably did more harm to people's lives doing that than even as Secretary of Defense. But side note, running a company, making sure to exploit people as much as possible, steal as much as possible from them while they're in their worst time of their lives, while they're sick, while they're ill, while they've got some sort of problem. That is the company he ran. So good guy all around. He was basically as defense secretary under Gerald Ford. He was like, I feel like I could probably... I feel like I'm doing a lot of good work here as defense secretary, but I feel like I could probably harm more people as the CEO of a big pharma company. And, it's a tough call. I feel like I'm doing I would do a lot of good work in either one and really harm a lot of lives at either one. But it just feels like I could harm a few more people at a big pharma company. So he went and did that. Then George Bush comes into office and he's like, you know what? Now that I really kind of have the dream team together, Bush, Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, now that I have the dream team together, I bet I could do more harm as defense secretary. So he comes running back to become defense secretary again. But he held all kinds of positions. He was a congressperson as well for a while before defense secretary. And he comes back in 2001, Secretary of Defense, and he played a central role in the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. Before and during the Iraq War, he claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Yet, you might recall, they're still looking for those. Any day now. Gonna find those. Any day. Gonna find those weapons of mass destruction. A Pentagon Inspector General report found that Rumsfeld top policy aide developed, produced, and then disseminated alternative intelligence assessments on the Iraq and al-Qaeda relationship, which basically didn't exist, which totally didn't exist, which then included some conclusions that were inconsistent with the consensus of the intelligence community to senior decision makers. So think about this. Donald Rumsfeld is putting out data, his top aide, but that means really him because he's instructing his top aide, right? Putting out data saying that Saddam Hussein's working with al-Qaeda, which completely wasn't true. And even the intelligence community, even the fucking CIA was like, we haven't really seen that. We didn't really find any of the things you're talking about. And he's like, no, found it. Yeah, saw it. And they're like, but no, we didn't. The CIA, one of the most harmful, awful, disgusting organizations that's ever been in existence, is like saying to Rumsfeld, like, this seems a bit sketchy. I don't know about this. So he pushes that shit out there. He also was behind the use of torture at Abu Ghraib prison and the prisoner abuse there. Rumsfeld gradually lost political support and resigned in 2006. In his retirement years, he published his autobiographies and even published a book on leadership lessons from one of the most notorious war criminals who's ever lived. leadership lessons, how to be a good leader, how to tell others what to do when you really want to kill and destroy as many human beings as possible. And by the way, I just want to say, now that he's headed to the afterlife, I hope that all of his millions of dollars comes with him. I hope he's able to travel with that, because, why amass that fortune if you can't bring it with you? So I hope he's able to bring that with him. I hope all of the heads of the people he's killed, I hope he's able to bring all those with him. And, because, it's probably a lot of bags to carry for that poor guy as he heads on to the afterlife. But, I hope all that goes with him, because what would be the point if it didn't, right? It would almost, if it didn't, if all that money and everything didn't come with him, then, and all of his awards, oh my God, the awards they throw at people who are CEOs and do public service, like obliterating lives overseas for the American empire. Joe Biden actually strapped the, whatever it was, the Medal of Liberty or something around George W. Bush. You can go watch the ceremony where Joe Biden put the Medal of Liberty on George W. Bush's fucking idiot throat and said, oh, what a great job Bush did for securing liberty and leadership. And so they throw all these awards at those heaps of human garbage. And I just hope he's able to bring all those with him so that he can continue to admire them. Because if you can't bring them with you, it would almost be like you lived life wrong. It would almost be like you were doing it for the wrong reasons. Your existence was for the wrong reasons. Wouldn't that be interesting if you couldn't bring it with you? Wouldn't it be interesting if the afterlife's not a real thing and this is it, and we got to make the most of it right now? Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be interesting if right now is about right now, rather than some mystical place that no one's ever seen evidence of? So I want to read a few minutes of this New York Times. So obviously, he died. He died just a few hours ago, or the report came in just a few hours ago. And then New York Times quickly throws together their article on Donald Rumsfeld, defense secretary during Iraq War, is dead at 88. And I want to read something, because I guarantee you that in their offices, they viewed this as a very measured article. They view this as an article that was not wholly positive, not wholly negative. I bet they view this as measured. But I'm going to go through how this is not fucking measured. Mr. Rumsfeld, first of all, calling him Mr., fuck him. He deserves no fucking respect or anything else. He's a goddamn war criminal. He should have spent his last years in a fucking prison. Forget the Mr. Mr. Rumsfeld, who served 4 presidents. Served. There's that word again, served. Who did he serve? Did he serve the American people? No, dragging us into ridiculous wars is not serving us. Did he serve this country? Did he serve the people he helped murder in Iraq for no reason? Or murder in Afghanistan for no reason? Was he serving them? Who was he serving? Or was it self-serving? Was it selfish? Was it his own drive towards power and money and destruction? That's what he served. That was his God. That was his ruler. Fucking selfish greed and power and all of that garbage human tendencies for the worst humans. I'm not one of these that believes every human has this drive to murder others or something. So this was what he believed as a sociopath, and that's what he served. He served that. So if they had said that, if they had said served his own fucking selfish greed and desire to kill and desire to be a god as he decides who lives and dies, desire to be a god as he tells the American people what the reality is, even when it's not reality. If they'd said that, I would have agreed. Okay, so we're, 4 words in, and I've spent 3 minutes breaking it down. Mr. Rumsfeld, who served 4 presidents, oversaw a war that many said should never have been fought. So that's my point, but they probably consider that very measured to include that in there. But he said the removal of Saddam Hussein had created a more stable and secure world. Why give what he said any time? Why? This is a disgusting human feces, shithead, war criminal, murderer, sociopath. Why give him room in the subheading of this article to tell you what he thought of what he did? Would you do that for Hitler? Would you do that for Osama bin Laden? Would you do that for any of the fucking killers that we can agree on that murdered endless numbers of people? Would you, in the subheading, put, well, he thought he was helping loads of people. He thought he was the cat's pajamas. You know? Nazi guard dead at 93, but he felt he was the cat's pajamas. Nazi guard dead, but he said he helped a lot of people. Why give him any fucking time in this? Because they're secretly fawning over him. They view this as a measured article, but they're secretly fawning over a powerful man. Donald H. Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense for Presidents Gerald Ford and George W. Bush, who presided over America's Cold War strategies. Again, all of that sounds very right. They did that to sound very impressive. And you got to understand, they don't have to say words like, oh, he's awesome. Oh, look how cool he was. They can leave out all those words and still secretly be writing an article that is meant to impress, that is meant to show the power and success of this man. A man who presided over America's Cold War strategies. And you got to remember that thanks to our endless indoctrination, our endless social engineering, people still think the Cold War was a fucking moral and legit fight to fight against the evils of communism. And so Rumsfeld helped us do that, helped us fight against these other countries. He was also part of Vietnam because I think he was under McNamara during Vietnam. And so he helped murder all those people as well. So let's not forget that. He presided over America's Cold War strategies in the 1970s and in the new world of terrorism decades later. So there you go. They've now couched this entire article. Because that is how you make someone who is a piece of shit look like they weren't so bad. Is you say to people, hey, it was a different world then, folks. It was a different world. So now the New York Times has told you this was in a world, a new era of terrorism, of bad guys trying to get us, right? Even though if you still include the 3,000 that died on 9/11, the number of terrorist killings in the United States is borderline nothing compared to any other country, compared to most other countries. And especially if you count our bombs as terrorism or our U.S.-backed coups, the deaths during those as terrorism, then the U.S. has seen relatively no terrorism, even if you count the 3,000 that died on 9/11. So, but to create this world, this couch it in this world of terrorism. Now, your average American reader, I get this, not you guys, but your average American reader gets put back in a place and they go, oh, he was protecting us. This guy was our protector. I forgot about that. What a great, good protector. Thank goodness we had Daddy to protect us. Good Daddy Rumsfeld protected us during this new era of terrorism. They then continue the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. He died on Tuesday. Blah, blah, blah. Encores are hardly rare in Washington. Mr. Rumsfeld had the distinction of being the only defense chief to serve 2 non-consecutive terms under President Ford and then under Bush. See, distinction. Why use the word distinction unless you worship this shit? The New York Times worships defense secretaries who they've all been, at least, especially since World War II, but we've been at war 97% of the time that America has been a country. We've been at war. And the vast majority of those have not been legitimate or needed or defensive. So anyway, we'll just go since World War II, at least. The defense secretaries have been fucking war criminals. They are murderers. They are sociopaths. They view bombing innocent people overseas as not a problem, as just fine, as it doesn't even interrupt their sleep, right? That's what Mad Dog Mattis said. You know, well, how did would you bomb that wedding party? You killed dozens of innocent people headed to a wedding. Why did you do? Oh, I'm fine with that. I would do it again. That's how they view it. So anyway, Rumsfeld, only defense chief to serve two distinction. What a distinction. He was also the youngest and the oldest at 43 and 74. Oh my goodness. Wow. He was a war criminal at a young age and a war criminal at an older age. Oh, yay, says the New York Times. How impressive. What a great guy. How did he do it? How did he? It's like saying, you know, like they're talking about it like Michael Jordan, like has somehow, you know, like talking about his achievements. Like Michael Jordan is, oh my goodness, what a good guy. Look at what he's done. He hit the basketball in the rim a bunch of times. And that's how they're talking about it. This guy was a defense secretary at his young age and an old age. Oh, how impressive. And then they say, first in an area of Soviet-American nuclear perils, then in an age of subtler menace by terrorists and rogue states. And let's remember that the Soviet-American nuclear perils were actually being settled in back channels by JFK and Khrushchev after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And they were settling it in back channels, and that's one of the reasons that the CIA needed to take out JFK, because he was ending the Cold War, and that was not okay with them. That was not allowable. A staunch ally of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Well, there you go. That's not a positive. But even that, here's the thing, even that. Why don't they say partner in crime of Dick Cheney? Because staunch ally, people, this is the manipulation of the New York Times. Staunch ally always sounds positive to us. It doesn't matter who the fuck is at the end of the sentence, because we view it as loyalty, friendship, working together. We just view it positively. Those words, like if you did a test, one of those tests of like how people feel about certain words out of context, ally, they'd go, oh, that's very nice. That's great. So by using those words, even though Dick Cheney, one of the most hated people in American history, is at the end of that sentence, people still view it positively. They're like, oh, staunch ally. What a good friend. I bet he brought over baked goods to his house so they could share time together, you know, and just sit on the porch with a like potato salad and just enjoy being staunch allies together. Again, positive words to describe a sociopath. Staunch ally of former Vice President Dick Cheney, who had been his protege and friend. Again, very positive word, friend for years. Mr. Rumsfeld was a combative infighter. So now those words sound bad. But here's the thing. When you hear the rest of the sentence, combative infighter who seemed to relish conflicts as he challenged cabinet rivals, members of Congress, and military orthodoxies. That, I bet you your average American views as positive. This is a guy he was combative. He was a fighter. He stood up. He relished the fight. That, and I'm not saying every culture views that as good, but in the American culture, that is, fighter. All right. Yes, combative. Good. Okay. That's my man. Yeah. Oh, what was it? The fucking, oh, Jesus. My brain's gone. The guy who starred in Home Improvement, the comedian. But anyway, his big thing was, right? So that's, that's what they're doing right here. This was, I'm a big, tough man, combative with other people who get in my way. All right. That's what they're doing right here. He was widely regarded in his second tour as the most powerful defense secretary. Powerful, another great word. Since Robert McNamara during the Vietnam War. Like his counterpart of long ago, Mr. Rumsfeld in Iraq waged a costly and divisive. So this is the part I said they probably view as very nuanced, very, very moderate. We didn't give him a positive obituary. Basically, that's what this is. Costly and divisive war that ultimately destroyed his political life and outlived his tenure by many years. But even with that, so yes, that is a negative that they're saying. But even with that, they're saying that the war destroyed his political life. Rather, Tim Allen. Sorry. Thank you, Larry, for giving me his name. Tim Allen. Anyway, yes, Galaxy Quest. Great movie. And they totally destroyed it because it didn't get marketed well. They didn't, because the production company or whatever, the movie house didn't understand it. The studio didn't understand it, and so they didn't advertise it, and it bombed in theaters because they didn't advertise it. Also, another movie like that, Idiocracy, great movie. But had a lot of great points in it. But for one thing, they kept cutting money out of it because they hated it, and which is why it looks pretty cheap. And they also, when it came out ultimately, because it makes fun of so many brands, Idiocracy, they decided to not advertise it at all. And for a long time, they wouldn't even put it out, like a year. And then they finally release it. And they finally release it. And not only do they not advertise it, but in like Rotten Tomatoes and in a bunch of online places, they didn't even give them the title. It was initially titled Mike Judge Untitled Project, because they didn't want people to watch Idiocracy because it made fun of so many companies like Starbucks, etc. That I think it was Fox Studios, maybe, that they knew they'd be working with in the future, and they didn't want to insult them. So they just did their best to destroy it. But then it basically went viral on VHS. Those were the days of VHS. Remember those things? Oh my God. You like carried this like brick around and then you shoved it in the TV. It was very sexual. You had to go and be like, and shove it in the TV. And it was weird times. I think we all felt pretty weird about it. I don't know. I was kind of more polite and romantic about it. I'd throw some lube on the VHS before I put it in the slot. But I think a lot of people were pretty rough, just jam it on in there. And it didn't feel right the way we were treating the TVs and the VCRs. It just didn't feel right. And Mass Casualty asking why my mind always goes there. Because we're human and all of our minds always go there. But anyway, let's get back to Rumsfeld for a minute. I was just saying they said that the war destroyed his political life as if it wasn't his fault. This thing just destroyed his political life. No, he being a sociopath and killing, they believe 1 million people. The numbers are that 1 million people have died in Iraq. So he's responsible for 1 million deaths in Iraq. And then they go, but unlike McNamara, who offered mea culpas in 2003 documentary, The Fog of War. By the way, everyone should watch The Fog of War. Not because McNamara deserves our fucking pity and, McNamara finally saw the error of his ways. Error and era. The error of his ways, not because he deserves our pity, but because he, in that documentary, admits that the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was used to get Congress to agree to the Vietnam War, put boots on the ground and all that shit, basically to amp up the Vietnam War, which killed God knows how many people, it wasn't real. It was a U.S. battleship firing at storm clouds. And McNamara admits it in that documentary. And it's kind of, again, New York Times is at least mentioning the documentary, but they're not mentioning that. They just said he offered mea culpas. They don't say that McNamara, the defense secretary during Vietnam, says it was all based on a lie. That's what the New York Times should say. And when Fog of War came out, I can guarantee you New York Times did not have a cover story says Vietnam War, all a lie. For some odd reason, I bet you that did not happen in the New York Times. Mr. Rumsfeld acknowledged no serious failings and warned in a farewell valedictory at the Pentagon that quitting Iraq would be a terrible mistake, even though the war the country learned had been based on a false premise. Isn't that a nice way to say fucking lies? A false premise. Yes. Bombing the fuck out of it. Yes, Mark. Rumsfeld is dead. Out of after bombing and killing 1 million Iraqis, it was based on a false premise, not fucking lies, not fucking bullshit sprayed fire hose level out of the faces of George W. Bush, Rumsfeld, and our Congress, all fawned over, fucking high-fived them, even though the lies were coming out of the colon pals and spraying out of their colon. So even though the bullshit was spraying out of their colon, the fucking Congress was voting for it, allowing it, pushing it, fucking celebrating it, going on all the goddamn TV shows and saying it's a great idea. So fuck them too. It's not just George W. Bush, not just Dick Cheney, it's not just Rumsfeld. Fuck them all for agreeing to this. And now you have them going, oh, that might not have been a good idea. Because here's the secret. Here's the secret the New York Times still won't admit. It was a bad idea because they got caught. But what they achieved in Iraq, in Afghanistan, is what they wanted: to create failed states, to create states that could not threaten them, that weren't powerful, that weren't threatening to get out of our central banking cartel, that didn't have a lot of money or a lot of strength or a lot of military. Creating failed states in these places was the goal. And that is the deeper secret that can never be revealed. The secret of like, oh, it turns out there's no WMD, that's been revealed. But what they can never say, what the New York Times can never say, what our politicians can never say, is this was the goal. Iraq, destroyed and completely impotent. Afghanistan, destroyed and completely not a threat. Syria, largely destroyed and largely not a threat. People still dying every day in Syria, and we keep our sanctions on them. Libya, destroyed, turned into warlords fighting with each other over who can own the most slaves. That was the goal. So while Obama and all them go, oh, Libya, oh, that's not what we wanted to happen. Oh, Iraq, oh, we thought there were WMD. Oh, Afghanistan, after all these years, we still haven't found the right solution in Afghanistan. Oh, no. While they do all that, the truth is, this is what they wanted. Failed states. They got what they wanted. Because they're sociopaths and killers and fucking awful human beings. All right, that's enough of the New York Times article, because I think if I go much further, I might vomit. But it just goes to show you that while most people are probably reading that article right now, because, you know, those are some of their most viral articles, right? Someone big dies and they go, what does the New York Times say? And it'll be on the cover of the New York Times tomorrow. And while most people might read that and go, oh, well, New York Times did a good job, it wasn't a favorable piece. They talk about how bad the Iraq war turned out. But in fact, you actually dissect it. You actually look at the terminology, and 98% of that article is favorable or making people think that these are good things. And that Daddy Rumsfeld defended us in a time of terrorism, even though he kind of outstayed his welcome with Iraq. So it's important to not fall for this manipulation, even in an article where the New York Times is a little more measured, throws in some of the stuff that, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't think the New York Times would mention that Rumsfeld lied about WMD. It's like, no, they'll get that in there, but they'll use a lot of terminology that makes you think this was a tough guy, a combative guy, staunch allies, but combative with other people. What a good leader. Put out a book on how to lead people straight into death's door. All right, guys, that's all I have time for today, but all the donations go to people who are struggling. It's our little solidarity fund. We funnel it all back to you. Oh, wow, I'm just noticing that I think it was Volante donated $50. That's fucking awesome. Truly incredible. Thanks for the donation. All of that goes to the Solidarity Fund, goes out to help people who are struggling, people who need a little help. And if that is you, you can email commoncensored@protonmail.com. Just to be clear, this is, the average we're able to give to people is around $80. So it's not, don't think that it's going to be thousands. It's just a little help. Get you through a week or two or something. Help you out in that way. So thank you guys for joining me. And check out the new Common Censored podcast. Just came out today. And that's all at leecamp.com. New redacted tonight from last Friday, but there's another new one coming out this coming Friday. And Government Secrets. Don't forget to check out that. And and if you want to support my stuff and support this, go to liberapay.com/leecamp, liberapay.com/leecamp, and keep fighting, everybody. It's an exciting time to be alive, right? Would you rather be alive at any other time? How exciting is this time? It's incredible. Keep fighting.